Episode 5, Fractured Paths. Sabrina raised the fragmented lens, its cool surface pressing against her palm as she studied the greenhouse's ivy-covered walls. Through its crystalline view, sickly green veins of magic pulsed beneath the natural growth, twisting through the plants like parasitic threads. The energy signatures match, Noah said, frowning at his handheld detector. Same magical fingerprint we found at both the Historical Society and the Gilded Grove. Whoever's been tampering with the town's magic has definitely been here. Sabrina took a step forward, but the greenhouse's vines responded instantly, writhing and weaving into complex barrier patterns. Through nearby plants, she felt Quill's essence recoil, a wave of revulsion at the corrupted magic saturating the structure. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through grimy glass panes, casting strange, shifting shadows that seemed to track their movements. Noah ran his fingers along the greenhouse's outer frame, his face tight with concern. These wards, they've been modified, just like at the Historical Society. Same signature, same technique. Through the fractured lens, Sabrina observed the alterations in the protective magic, her stomach clenching at the familiar distortion. What should have been a simple containment barrier had been twisted into something else entirely, its magical essence warped like light through a prism. "They're not just keeping things out anymore," she said, fighting back a shiver. "They're channeling energy inward, concentrating it. Like a magical pressure cooker." Their first attempt to enter triggered an immediate response that made Sabrina stumble backward. Vines cracked through the air like whips while flowers burst open with unnatural speed, releasing clouds of suspicious golden pollen that sparkled ominously in the late afternoon light. She reached out with her magic, connecting to Quill's essence in the surrounding plants. Their distress flooded her senses like a tidal wave. They were fighting against an invasive magical influence that bent them against their nature, twisting their growth patterns into painful configurations. "Wait," she said, studying the lens's view carefully as understanding dawned. "There's a pattern to the corruption. See how it creates these gaps?" She traced the path with her finger, showing Noah where the sickly magic thinned out like holes in a tapestry. The corrupted energy pulsed with an unsettling rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat. He documented the unusual growth patterns with his camera, muttering notes into his recorder with practiced efficiency. "The plants are feeding off the unstable energy. It's changing their basic structure at a cellular level." They followed the safe path inside, where the greenhouse's interior revealed itself as a study in magical extremes that made Sabrina's magical senses real. The left side remained locked in perpetual autumn, leaves forever golden and falling in an endless cycle, while aggressive spring growth dominated the right, vines reaching and stretching with unnatural vigor. Where the two zones met, energy crackled and sparked like miniature lightning, making Sabrina's skin tingle and her hair stand on end. Research stations dotted the space, abandoned mid-experiment as if their owner had fled in haste. Sabrina picked up a notebook, its pages filled with calculations about seasonal transitions and accelerated growth patterns, the handwriting growing increasingly frantic toward the final entries. Through the lens, she could see lingering traces of failed attempts to force Halloween and spring magic to merge, leaving scorch marks visible only in magical sight. The greenhouse's centerpiece commanded attention, a massive vine structure whose trunk consisted of plants caught between seasons, neither dying nor growing, frozen in a painful state of transition. The lens revealed pulses of energy flowing through it in a familiar rhythm that made her breath catch. "That matches the timing of the portal appearances," Sabrina said, just as Noah's hand brushed against something hidden in the vines, triggering a mechanism. A soft click preceded the rustle of moving plants, revealing a sophisticated work area that spoke of careful planning. The equipment scattered across the tables matched what they'd found in the Gilded Grove, down to the distinctive magical modifications. Sabrina pressed her hand against a metal surface, feeling residual warmth. Still warm. Whoever was here left recently. The surrounding plants grew increasingly agitated as they pressed deeper into the greenhouse, their movements jerky and unnatural. Sabrina used the lens to trace how the corrupted magic spread through the root system, creating a perfect mirror of Hallowville's ley line network, each intersection marked by concentrated knots of twisted energy. Behind a growth of thorny vines that seemed to part reluctantly at their approach, they uncovered a partially completed ritual circle. The lens revealed its true purpose, a channeling point aimed directly at the Tree of Seasons, timed for the Equinox. Scattered notes confirmed her growing fear, it wasn't the only one. "They're setting up multiple circles around town," Noah said, photographing the evidence with quick, efficient movements. "Creating some kind of network. Like a web." As they turned to leave, the greenhouse's plants suddenly contracted in unison with an audible whoosh, pulling back to expose a wall covered in magical calculations and maps that made Sabrina's head spin. Through the lens, she could see invisible markings connecting various locations throughout Hallowville, glowing with a sickly green light. At the center of the complex pattern sat the Tree of Seasons, surrounded by annotated equations and astronomical charts that hinted at something far more ambitious than simple magical manipulation. The plants quickly moved to cover the wall again, but Noah had already captured several photos. Sabrina's heart pounded as she processed what they'd discovered. The collector wasn't just stealing artifacts, they were systematically preparing something much bigger, something that threatened the very heart of Hallowville's magic. Sabrina's magical senses tingled as she moved deeper into the greenhouse's oppressive humidity. Near a weathered workbench, plants suddenly bent away as if in pain, their leaves trembling. Quill's essence flickered through them like a warning pulse. She raised the fragmented lens, and her breath caught. The area was scarred with magical trauma, the residual energy creating patterns of damage visible only through the ancient glass. "Noah, look at this," she called softly. The lens revealed layers of magical experimentation, each attempt leaving its own distinctive wound in the ambient energy. The scars pulsed with sickly colors, autumn gold twisted into something unnatural, spring green corrupted to a toxic shade that made her magical senses recoil. Through the ancient glass, she could trace the progression of the experiments, each one more aggressive than the last, like someone learning through brutal trial and error. Noah approached, his boots crunching on fallen leaves. He lifted something from beneath a tangle of withered vines, a ritual bowl carved with intricate seasonal runes. Wood shavings still clung to its bottom, and through the lens, they blazed with familiar energy. The bowl's edges were worn smooth, suggesting repeated use, and faint traces of magical residue formed ghostly patterns in the air above it. Sabrina could almost see phantom hands performing the rituals, the memory of their work etched into the magical fabric of the space. "These came from the tree," Sabrina said, her stomach tightening. The magical signature was unmistakable. She'd spent enough time near the Tree of Seasons to recognize its unique pattern. "The energy match is perfect." Her fingers tingled where they gripped the lens, resonating with the same frequency she felt whenever she stood beneath the tree's protective canopy. Around her, plants trembled in response to her distress, Quill's essence rippling through their leaves like a protective embrace. As she examined the workbench, her unease grew. Precise surgical tools lay arranged with methodical care, delicate silver blades, crystalline extractors, and implements she'd never seen before but instinctively knew were designed for magical harvesting. Dried sap coated several of the instruments, glowing through the lens with the tree's distinctive golden-orange energy. The careful arrangement spoke of someone who approached their work with scientific precision and unsettling dedication. Each tool had been placed with exacting care, their shadows falling at perfect angles, as if their positioning was part of some larger ritual pattern she couldn't quite decipher. A vine near her shoulder suddenly twisted, suffused with Quill's essence. The movement triggered a cascade of magical residue, and ghostly images flickered before her eyes, hands moving with surgical precision, carefully processing a root fragment. The collector's movements spoke of intimate familiarity with the tree's properties, each gesture calculated and confident, as if they'd spent years studying its magical composition. The vision carried an echo of cold determination that made Sabrina shiver, reminding her of the clinical precision she'd witnessed in the most dangerous magical practitioners. "Sabrina." Noah's voice pulled her from the vision. He held up a leather-bound journal, its pages dense with calculations and stained with what appeared to be dried sap. These formulas, they're about magical resonance. Look how they connect the root fragment to the other stolen artifacts. His finger traced lines between complex diagrams, the paper crackling beneath his touch like autumn leaves. She studied the precise diagrams and numbers, noting how they mapped perfectly to the tree's known energy patterns. They're creating some kind of synchronized network. But why? She broke off as she raised the lens to examine the ritual space again, the glass humming against her fingertips. The residual energy formed an exact mirror of the tree's current magical pattern, down to the smallest fluctuation. Understanding hit her like a physical blow, making her breath catch. They weren't just studying the root. They were duplicating the tree's energy signature. A cluster of withered flowers suddenly burst into bloom, Quill's influence making them glow with renewed life, their petals dancing with golden-orange light. The sudden movement revealed a hidden compartment beneath the workbench, its edges traced with faint magical wards. Inside, carefully arranged vials contained processed root essence, each one pulsing with a different seasonal frequency. The glass containers hummed faintly, their contents swirling with an inner light that matched the tree's heartbeat, creating an unsettling chorus of magical resonance. Scattered notes told a story of frustration, failed attempts to merge the root's energy with spring magic. The collector's handwriting grew increasingly agitated with each entry, railing against resistant Halloween elements that seemed built into the tree's very nature. Ink blots and torn pages betrayed moments of particular anger, some entries so violently scratched out that they'd torn through multiple pages. Through the lens, Sabrina traced how the ritual site connected to the greenhouse's corrupted plant network, her magical senses recoiling from the wrongness of it. The root fragment's influence spread through every twisted vine and mutated leaf, creating a web of controlled vegetation that mimicked the tree's natural patterns but felt hollow, artificial. The corruption felt wrong against her magical senses, like fingernails scraping across her consciousness, making her teeth ache with its discordant energy. Noah's EMF meter chirped as he swept it across the workspace, its display flickering with unusual intensity. Portal energy, he said, frowning at the readings. Mixed with the root's signature. They were studying how the tree stabilizes dimensional boundaries. The device's screen flickered with unusual patterns, its normal steady rhythm disrupted by whatever experiments had been conducted here, occasional sparks dancing across its surface. Another surge of Quill's essence rippled through nearby plants, sending a shiver of awareness down Sabrina's spine and making her pendant grow warm against her skin. The lens revealed the ritual's true purpose with stark clarity, its fractured surface casting prismatic patterns that made her stomach clench with dread. The root fragment hadn't just been studied, it had been used to decode the tree's fundamental magic, each experiment peeling back another layer of its ancient defenses like dissecting a living thing. The collector had methodically mapped every magical frequency the tree produced, from its seasonal pulses to its deeper resonance with Hallowville's ley lines, creating a comprehensive blueprint of its power that could be twisted to serve their own ends. As they finished documenting the scene, Sabrina noticed a calendar pinned beneath a growth of ivy, its edges curling with moisture. The approaching equinox date was circled in red, surrounded by complex diagrams showing the tree's energy patterns aligning with seasonal portal formations. Each diagram was annotated with precise calculations and timing marks, the handwriting growing more frenzied toward the edges, as if the writer had been seized by mounting excitement or desperation. "The collector hasn't been studying the tree to understand it," she said, her voice tight as the full implications settled like ice in her chest. "They've been learning how to control it." The corrupted plants around them seemed to twist in response to her words, their unnatural movements a silent confirmation of her fears. A sudden pulse of magical energy rippled through the greenhouse, making Sabrina's skin tingle with warning. Before she could react, vines snapped across the doorway and windows like living bars, their corrupted magic giving off a sickly green glow. The air grew thick and heavy, magical particles dancing like malevolent fireflies in the dimming light. "We need to go," Noah said, striding to the door. His hand met invisible resistance, and he pulled back with a sharp intake of breath. Some kind of barrier. Sabrina raised the fragmented lens, its surface catching what little light remained. Through its revealing facets, she saw intricate patterns of magic forming a dome around them, a containment spell, its structure suggesting careful preparation. This was planned, she said, tracing the complex magical weave with her eyes. It was waiting for us. The temperature plummeted without warning, frost crystallizing across the workbenches. Seconds later, suffocating heat filled the space, making sweat bead on her forehead. The plants responded to each extreme, writhing and twisting in increasingly threatening patterns. Noah's EMF meter squealed, its display cycling through impossible readings. "The equipment's going haywire," he reported, tapping the screen. "It's picking up multiple types of magical energy, all conflicting." Through the chaos, Sabrina felt Quill's essence fighting against the corrupted magic. Small channels of clear energy formed, like streams cutting through muddy water. As she focused on these paths, brief visions flashed through her mind, similar magical configurations near the town square, beside the library, along the park's edge. Her stomach dropped. This is just one of many. They're testing something bigger. Gathering her power, Sabrina attempted to dismantle the trap, weaving counterspells through its structure. But the magic twisted away from her influence, absorbing her energy and growing stronger. Through the lens, she watched in dismay as the trap's pattern shifted and adapted, learning from her attempt to disable it. "Sabrina," Noah called, his voice tight. "Look." Shadowy figures flickered in the corners, magical echoes of the collector performing rituals. Each phantom revealed different spells, different techniques, displaying a breadth of magical knowledge that made Sabrina's breath catch. The images moved with precise, practiced motions, each one demonstrating mastery of different magical disciplines. A gentle nudge against her magical senses drew her attention to a cluster of uncorrupted plants, their leaves trembling with Quill's influence. As she watched, they began growing in distinct patterns, mimicking the trap's magical structure but highlighting subtle weaknesses in its design. The plants were showing her the trap's blueprint through their natural growth patterns. The air crackled as the trap cycled through seasonal magic. Spring energy sent vines whipping through the air, summer heat made the glass panes expand and crack, autumn winds howled through tiny gaps, and winter frost created spreading patterns of ice. A pane of glass shattered above them, and Noah pulled her aside as sharp shards rained down. Something caught her eye through the lens, a sigil partially hidden beneath years of overgrowth, its pattern slightly off-kilter compared to the collector's other work. Nearby leaves glowed with Quill's essence, all pointing toward the marking like natural arrows. "There's something under here," she said, fighting through increasingly aggressive vines to reach the sigil. As she got closer, its true purpose became clear. "It's recording us. Everything we do, every spell we try, it's gathering data." Noah helped her clear away the growth, revealing the complete sigil. "Can you disable it?" Sabrina placed her hand over the marking, channeling her magic through Quill's clear paths to avoid the trap's defensive measures. She felt the moment her power made contact with the sigil's core, and the instant it recorded her magical signature. The trap dissolved around them, but she could see through the lens as residual energy flowed outward along Hallowville's ley lines, carrying everything it had learned about their capabilities with it. As the last of the corrupted magic faded, words appeared on the greenhouse floor, glowing with faint green light. "Every defense reveals its weakness." The message disappeared like smoke in the wind, leaving them in the sudden quiet of the greenhouse. Noah brushed glass shards from his jacket. "They wanted us to find this place." Sabrina stared at where the message had been, the fragmented lens still showing traces of energy flowing outward through the town. The collector hadn't just set a trap, they'd created an elaborate test, and she and Noah had just given them exactly what they wanted.